Welcome to the Mercer Marsh Benefits webinar. We will be starting our program in close to a minute. We have a number of participants who have already logged in and many more are joining in. Once again, a very warm welcome to all the participants for the Mercer Marsh Benefits webinar, a Resilient India Inc. Rising to COVID-19. We have a very large number of participants who have registered for the event. Over 500 corporates have registered for the event, and we are rapidly seeing the number of participants who have logged in. In the interest of time, we will start our webinar as other participants continue to join in. So Prabal will roll the slides, and thank you once again for joining the webinar. I'm Sanjay Kedia, CEO and Country Head for Marsh India. Next. We all know how to operate Zoom in the last 18 months, and we all know how to operate and enjoy this webinar. You have an opportunity to raise questions at any time during the program. There's a Q&A tab. Please type in all your queries, questions, and comments over there. And if you want to speak live, please raise your hand. And after we're done with our panel discussion, we'll be happy to open your line and get you to speak live as well. I'm delighted to have such experienced leaders from the HR fraternity for our today's discussion. Padmaja, Partner and Chief People Officer from Pricewaterhouse. Sunit Sinha, Partner Performance, Head of People, Performance and Culture at KPMG India. Rupa, Leader of Total Rewards, Goldman Sachs. Malika, Leader for Rewards, South Asia, Hindustan Lever. So thank you to these panel members, the rich experience they bring together from diverse organizations, and we'll be having a very interesting panel discussion shortly. Before I invite my colleague Prabal Kalita to share the survey findings, I'll make some quick remarks. The COVID, the pandemic wave 1, saw the corporate India taken by surprise. We saw retrenchments, we saw salary cuts in certain industries, and we saw a sense of fear and unknown how to handle this. Wave 2 was a very different reaction from the majority of corporate Inc. I would say maybe 80 to 90% of the corporate Inc. responded very positively in terms of employee care and empathy and increasing the benefits during the phase 2. A very different reaction from phase 1 to phase 2 on the COVID. We saw corporates coming with innovative, different support programs. Not only the benefits were increased on the insured side, the support on vaccination, home care, telemedicine, mental health, you name it, the supports were rolled out. The support in form of announcing death benefits, childcare support for long-term in case of death. There are so many things which were rolled out. We also saw a huge desire on the corporate end to know what others are doing. We were on an uncharted territory. There were no benchmarks really available for many of these benefits. There's a lot of interest, and therefore we see a huge registration and participation for this event. People want to know, are these benefits sustainable? What happens beyond COVID situation? And many are tweaking and preparing for potential wave 3, which nobody knows whether it will come in what form and what shape. So there are so many questions and so many learnings, and we learn from each other. And therefore, we have such a fabulous industry panel and many experts out here in the participant list as well. We want to hear you all. We want to get your comments. We want to get your questions. And let me invite my colleague Praval Kalita, who will share with you the survey finding, which was put together in a record time with the help of our consulting team within the employee health and benefits at Mercer Marsh Benefits. So over to you, Praval, who leads our employee benefits program for Mercer Marsh Benefits.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thanks for setting the context out there. Yes, we in June 2021, right after the second wave struck us, we did this pulse survey to find out what are the best practices on employee health and benefit in response to the second wave of COVID-19. Right to 2020-21, we saw a lot of new things happening in the space of health and benefit, but we thought it's apt for us to go back to all our clients and check, what are the best practices out there when it came to responding to second wave of COVID-19. We had closer to 200 corporates who participated in our pulse survey, and we thought that we'll bring to you the results of this and also get a panel discussion opened up and invite you all for your views and insights and questions and answer sessions post the panel discussion. Starting with, we built a resiliency index in the pulse survey, and we asked all our participants what are the key priority areas for them when it came to responding to COVID-19 second wave specifically. No surprise out there. I think right through 2020-21, we continue to see health and safety of our employees and overall well-being of our employees being a boardroom discussion and one of the most important area of investment and engagement from an employee's point of view. And this is where therefore 96% of our participants said that yes, this remains the most important area of investment and engagement from a business perspective. Secondly, we saw that yes, business continuity was right back again in the top of the chart out there, primarily because we went back again into a lockdown right in April when second wave struck us. So everybody who thought that yes, we can come back to our offices were surprised to see that yes, we have to go for again another phase of lockdown, and therefore business continuity became one of the priority areas. Thirdly, we found that most companies wanted to revisit whatever they were doing in the entire health and benefit space. Things like leaves, the financial support, that again picked up interest, and a lot of companies revisited what they are doing in leaves and financial support. And we'll talk about some of the best practices out there also in this particular area. Right when government announced that COVID-19 vaccinations are available now, and we saw all the government drives also happening, we found all the corporate players embracing COVID-19 vaccination program for their employees, either through corporate vaccination program or reimbursement programs. We'll have some data point also shared on that. Lastly, the insured benefit space saw a paradigm shift given the exposure that elderly population have on COVID-19 and comorbidity. We found that a lot of companies were bringing back a lot of work to do in terms of covering the elderly population, the parents and the parents-in-law, and a lot of voluntary parents program and top-up policies saw huge surge in terms of participation. We'll also look at some of the data points in this area. Coming to, of course, all of us know that right in April and middle of April when the second wave struck us, we found that health and safety was right at the top. And we found that a lot of measures were taken up by almost all corporates across the board, right from employee assistance program, the COVID-19 advisory and the guidelines, the well-being sessions with the medical fraternity being called for well-being sessions to address the employees' concern around COVID-19, how to take care of COVID-19 and the symptoms, and most importantly, the telemedicine support. This was one of the most important asks across all corporates we saw. In Mercer Benefits, we handle close to 2,000 corporates in India right now in their employee and benefit programs. And no surprise out there that we are seeing that almost 74% of the companies said that they wanted to do something new in the telemedicine area. We saw over 500% surge in utilization of COVID-19 support through telemedicine because it was difficult to go across and visit a hospital and get medical support. So this was one of the very important area of work, and we are finding increasingly more and more keenness from all corporates to look at telemedicine support for their employees. The right-hand side of it are mostly what we saw, a lot of action happening, a lot of volunteering work happening. In India, to everybody's surprise, we realized that there is no structured approach on emergency medical response. Companies who are able to offer us emergency medical assistance were not around, not too many were there. And even if there are helplines, those helplines were not being able to access. I think this was a very important learning across the board, and everybody dependent on the TP ecosystem, the brokers like us. We did a lot of work out there to support our clients. And most importantly, a lot of corporates actually adopted volunteering as one of the areas, in which they were able to manage this emergency medical assistance. Medical equipments were sold right from O2 oxygen concentrators and various other, medical equipment were sold globally and distributed widely across the country. This was something which was unheard of, and we saw this also happening right through April, May, and June. Employers wanted to empanel home care treatment partners. Many companies actually started covering home care treatment in the Mediclaim policies. We saw hotel isolation again, picking a lot of interest. So there were a lot of hotel isolation partners who were, empaneled by the corporates, and we started seeing even the insurance program being, responding to, hotel isolation, home care treatment, and unheard things. And today these are becoming BAU out there. Moving on from there, in terms of what new benefits many companies introduced, like Sanjay said that yes, we did see a lot of traction in the health and benefit space. Financial well-being was one of the most important area of work out there. Many companies created COVID-19 healthcare fund, and they got global support to for all these new COVID-19 healthcare fund. So employees who were encountering high cost on hospitalization beyond even what insurance program can cover were supported through the COVID-19 healthcare fund. This also raised a question whether our sum insureds were enough or not. And therefore, many companies launched top-up plans, and those top-up plans saw huge participation out there. This is an important learning for all of us that yes, the top-up policies, the voluntary policies, therefore can support us tomorrow in times of emergency. When it came to leaves, we saw that employers were giving 14 days of leave on an average. That's the median number out there, 14 days of leave to affected employees. So anybody who has got COVID to recoup and recover, 14 days of leave were extended. We also saw that caregivers were offered 5 days of leave. This is something new. Most companies were giving only leaves to employees who are impacted by COVID, but not to caregivers. But in the second round of COVID wave, we saw that caregivers were also given additional 5 days of leave. When vaccination started rolling out, we found that many companies extended 2 days of vaccination leave, 2 days of side effect to manage the side effect, because yes, a lot of us encountered many side effects post vaccination, and to ensure that people are able to recover, 2 days of additional leaves were given. Bereavement leaves, this was something very important, and we saw mortality at unseen levels, in fact, and therefore most companies also extended bereavement leaves for any death in the family. Vaccination support already we spoke about. So almost 80% of the companies extended vaccination support through any form, be it a corporate vaccination program or any kind of reimbursement program. Some of the insurance policies also started responding to vaccination. So overall, we saw that India Inc. was ready to support all their employees in the areas of vaccination. I already spoke about this, but just a quick call out there, right from elderly population who were not able to access quality healthcare because of low sum insured, and also because home care treatment was not covered in many corporate policies. Many companies started introducing home care treatment, OPD expense cover in their insurance policies. They bought additional pandemic buffer to ensure that all high cost claims are taken care of. One of the very important findings that came to our notice, and we thought we'll share with you, is the co-funding approach adopted by companies. So what we hear is typically co-payment of claim, but co-funding of premium is increasingly becoming popular to encourage people to participate in all the voluntary plans, right through top-up policies or voluntary parents policy. We are finding increasing trend of companies introducing co-funding of premium to support employees to participate more widely in all these policies. That also gives us a sustainability of these plans. Many unique measures were found out there, right from no deduction in case of death due to COVID hospitalization, co-payment waiver if a conventional plan has a co-payment for any claim. But for COVID claims, most companies came back to us and said that we don't want to have any co-payment for a COVID claim. And I was not surprised therefore to see that the survey also brought out very similar results. Room rent was waived off for COVID claims, and many other measures were adopted to ensure that employees and their family members have a very seamless experience when it came to hospitalization of post-COVID. Lastly, what we also saw was many ex gratia schemes being announced, right from additional death benefit to the deceased family. Despite the fact that life insurance market was going through a very hard time with mortality rates at unseen level, and premium rates hardening, we saw that companies were introducing many ex gratia schemes to cover COVID debt. And also companies came back and requested to ensure the dependents of employees who have deceased because of COVID-19 should be covered for the remaining policy period, or some companies in fact said that we want to cover them for a longer term. Child education support is something new altogether that we heard on account of any COVID debt. And many companies also announced therefore long-term solutions in terms of providing child education assistance to any of deceased employees' children right up to the age of 18. So these are very unique and innovative benefits that we saw India Inc. actually announcing right through the 3 months. And we thought that we'll therefore share with you some of these best practices. Post this session, we'll also share with you the entire report. What I'm presenting you is only a brief summary of these new benefits, but at the same time, there are many other innovative ideas out there, many other new benefits introduced. I'll also share with you a copy. We'll also share with you a copy of the entire report so that you can, take it as a reference for preparation of any potential third wave, if at all we ever see. And unfortunately, if we see this, at least we'll be better prepared to handle this next time. Lastly, to summarize before I give it over to the panel, and Sanjay will be leading the panel discussion. Overall, in terms of financing healthcare needs, and the panel will visit this area, especially this particular area, and a couple of other areas like mental health at large. But yes, we saw a lot of work around financing healthcare needs. We saw a lot of work happening around mental health, a very important area of work. Mental health is already being treated at par with physical health, and therefore we are seeing increasingly mental health being embraced very deeply and widely by all companies across the board. We are also seeing that overall the healthcare ecosystem has been enriched. It's a boardroom subject today, and we are seeing therefore right from telemedicine or many other digitization of healthcare happening out there, and companies are increasingly adopting it. Lastly, but not the least, we are increasingly seeing an uprising trend on flexible benefits. In fact, a large number of corporates are today looking at how to move from a defined benefit structure to a defined contribution structure to manage cost better, to manage evolving needs of employees better, and to offer their employees more and more choice. With this, I'll end the session in terms of looking through the reports and the key findings. And I'll welcome now Sanjay to once again come back and lead the panel discussion with our industry leaders.
Thank you, Praval. We will get the presentation out. So once again, welcome to all the panelists, and for the benefit of all the participants, and of course the panelists know, we have no media here, no insurer. It's our corporate clients and our colleagues. Please feel free to share your thoughts freely. And I would like to share with everybody, the panelists represents over here, not their company's view. They come here as a industry thought leader so that we can have a free and frank open discussion. I start with Padmaja. She leads the Pricewaterhouse as a chief people officer now. Padmaja, the death benefit, which came in a big way during COVID as a risk, how do you see continuity of this cover beyond COVID? And how do you also see whether this cover will be beyond COVID? Because many employees are asking, death has been announced as a benefit due to COVID, but a death is a death. What about a death without non-COVID symptoms? So what are the things you are seeing? What are the thoughts, deliberations happening around you? Please, Padmaja, over to you.
Thanks, Sanjay, and good evening to everybody, and thank you for having me here. So I think, for many years, I think many organizations and our organization, we did have a standard set of benefits which are available, right, in case there's an unfortunate situation of death. So whether it's a term which is a certain multiple of that person's compensation, which compensation at a level, whether it's other benefits that you give, there was always some focus on that, right? And having a very young population, I mean, it was more the aberration than the norm, but there was always some focus on it. I think in COVID times, what many people have done is two other things. One is, you say that, look, in any situation, here is a bunch of things that I would do in the unfortunate event that I lost anybody in the team. Given COVID and the additional stress, because then you realize that, there were so many incidents of, let's say, more than one earning member being impacted. So we took a call to add more to that, right? So for example, we would top up the kind of cover which was there. We would look at giving, variable pay for a certain amount. We would look at gratuity treated at a certain, even if the person hadn't finished X number of years, you would give that. So there was a more, if I could call it, more benevolent or a more, thoughtful approach towards what is done. But on top of that, what became very important is a very curated approach to each family, right? Because say you lose somebody in their 40s, and let's say children have been through their education, you lose somebody who's much younger, is the spouse working or not? So that's where it becomes important to look at a very curated approach to each family. Because if you think about it, let's say your team member would have wanted her or his children to go to a certain standard of education, certain kind of college. Maybe the spouse is qualified but doesn't have employment, and therefore that livelihood is it's a big step up, right? It's not just the financial assistance. You also have to get a little bit into the context and curate it accordingly. So that whole 3-step approach, what you would always do, what you would do because it is a time of particular mental and health stress, and third is a very curated and unique approach to every family. Is it going to continue? I mean, Sanjay, I guess the jury is out. It would be lovely to hear other views also on that. But just 2 reflections from my side. I think one is, if we all as organized, if you look at the cost of benefits as a part of the total package, I think in most places it's still, a 1 to 2% kind of, as if I add in the fixed pay, I look at, the terminal benefits, you look at long-term incentives, you look at benefits, and it's such a small part of it, right? So I would think we will start seeing an increase in that. That's what I would feel if I just look at it from an overall kitty. And the second is, if I think about, the stakeholder, you have your employee, you have your shareholder, you have your customer. And I think in the last 18 months, most organizations have started giving more focus to the employee as a stakeholder. And to me, that's a very, very good step. So maybe some of this is going to take a turn for the better, even better than what it is today. And to me, that's a very, very good step.
Thank you so much, Padmaja. This is very useful. So what I'm hearing is that it's going to be most likely going to stay, but you are interested in hearing what others have to say. So I'll, with the permission, I'll just invite others also in terms of comments. So Rupa, maybe you would like to start with sharing what your thoughts, whether it should continue, it's likely to continue or not. And also you have, I want to ask you, how do you deal with many of these death benefits being announced as a long-term benefit? Like we saw in the presentation from Prabal, supporting a child of, in case an employee dies, their child up to graduation or up to certain levels. So these are long-term benefits. How are you funding, supporting, insured, not insured? Any thoughts, reactions, Rupa, from your side?
Sure. So there were a whole bunch of things that we did when COVID hit, and we were fortunate we had a relatively smaller number of people who were impacted at Goldman. But even if there is 1%, it still is a huge impact to the firm. And so there was, when we started, there were things like resiliency, we were looking at insurance, we were looking at annualization of a bonus or life insurance. And we said, okay, we will just do this for COVID. But then as we saw the situation getting, more intense, we realized that, it just makes logical sense to why not make this as a regular practice? And so to get to the point on what you're asking, a couple of things that we started off as purely COVID related benefits is now looking to be extended more broadly. Things like resilience for family, right? Not just EAP, but being able to have access to psychologists, psychiatrists, because if you are going to be providing it for the next 2 to 3 months, the family is going through so much of grief, it won't even register at that point in time. So what we are looking to do is giving a more long-term support for the family, maybe across a period of year or 2 years, ensuring that they have that access. The other thing that we started, which we never really thought of, is around insurance, which is, again, there is an insurance that the family, that the individual who was in the firm was providing, and then that suddenly goes off. Now, you may have an odd case where someone has an external insurance, but a lot often you don't have that insurance. And at that point in time, for them to even look at portability or looking at anything of that sort is extremely challenging. So we've now decided to get on to the point where we are probably looking at insurance over a 2-year period, which will continue to support the family, and then we'll see how to, kind of take it in the future. Then a couple of other things that we did was, contingent workers or our consultants who are not our employees, we are extending the same amount of support that we offer for employees to our consultants as well, of course, through their firm. And there is a lot of negotiations that we need to do through the firm to be able to support that. But we do want to extend the same programs for our contingent workers. Annualizing of bonus, ensuring that, again, this was a case-to-case basis. We weren't necessarily doing it for all people, but irrespective of when the person passes away, can we just pay for the bonus for the entire year? And last, I mean, there are several more other pieces that we did, but a couple of other things was insurance. We started off with introducing a minimum threshold, and then we realized it just makes sense to have this more longer term. So for life insurance specifically, we are going to be looking at a minimum threshold for settlement, and that's something that we're going to implement long term. To your question on childcare, trust me, we contemplated it. It's got so many nuances around it, so we still haven't got our head around how you deliver it. Given, do we pay lump sum? Do you do it every year? How long do we pay? So that's something that for a financial services company such as us is not straightforward. So that's going to be a more longer term conversation. I'll pause there if you have any questions.
No, thanks, Rupa. You have introduced so many interesting elements and nuances of how things are working. So really appreciate that. Sunit, how do you see the most exposed part of the population, which is the elderly? And is it an issue in your young organization? How do you see this whole elderly protection programs and the issues surrounding them?
Thanks for that question, Sanjay. I know, in many sectors, and it's not just at KPMG or in professional services firms, but I would say across India, if you look at India's demographics, 65% of the workforce is under 35. So one tends to assume that it's not an issue for them. And to be honest, I think over the last 18 months has brought that realization to a lot of people. I personally have always felt that it's not just about the individuals, the work, your people may be on the younger side. And again, of course, median ages, etc. vary. But for instance, the median age for KPMG in India is 27, right? So a fairly young workforce. However, the fact of the matter is that each of those youngsters have elderly parents. If they're married, they have in-laws. You may have also special situations that we've come across with families where potentially, maybe there's a grandparent involved as well. Them are multi-generation households, or someone who maybe has lost a parent or has lost their parents and has a guardian who may be an uncle or an aunt. So there are all those special situations as well. So in my mind, the focus has to be on the fact that and as all of us have come to know, no one's safe till everyone is safe. So no one's covered until everyone is covered. So at least we made an effort actually even before the pandemic hit us, and it became, and there were a lot of people who had not taken those options in terms of enrolling their in-laws or their parents or even some other elderly relatives who are and who are dependent on them or identified as their next of kin. But we saw a major uptake in that, and I would say this is something that. And I've got my colleagues here on the panel, and I'm sure there's almost 400 other our colleagues on the call here today. I think we need to take this and advocate this across the industry in various platforms, because this is the need of the hour. This pandemic has been a reminder, and now we don't know whether there's only one more wave or how many more waves. But the fact of the matter is, it's a reality. COVID has reminded us that comorbidity, people who are vulnerable, and sometimes those comorbidities may not only hit senior citizens; those could hit people who are even younger than that. So absolutely, I think there is no doubt in my mind that this is something that needs to be central to our agenda. We're not just focusing on your people, but focusing on who are their dependents and how do we make sure that we cover them, including, of course, children, etc. That's always the case. So I think what's happened is, Sanjay, if I were to summarize. This experience has taught us that the standard templates don't work. You need to be a little more agile and customize and be innovative in terms of what really constitutes, because what may constitute as people who I want to protect through the cover that I take with my organization may be very different from someone else in the same organization. So I think that flexibility and agility has to be brought in, and that's something that we all need to advocate, Sanjay.
Thank you, Sunit. Really appreciate your thoughts. If I can take a liberty of sharing a Marsh view on this, there's been so many questions pouring us on the elderly care. Marsh annual survey has shown in the last 15 years of the Indian market that the parents coverage on our survey was roughly around 25% of the corporates were providing, say 15 years back, moved rapidly up to 75% or 80% of the corporates were providing parents coverage. We saw a change of fully funded parents program trend in the early years when it grew to employee funded program in the later part, a big portion of those in the 75%. And later we saw a trend that in this employee funded program, the participation rate in the last 5-6 years has really dipped. So there's a parents program, but the participation rate has really dipped because only really sick parents participate, and the healthy parents, people don't want to pay such large premium. So we are seeing a trend, a learning from the Western world. The contribution of a premium by an employer, even up to 25% on the parents program, can create a participation rate significantly up. For our own programs in Marsh and Panglinan, we have gone now for a employer contribution of 25% on the parents program, and we saw a massive uptake on the participation of the parents program. So very interesting. And employees have started asking across the surveys we have seen when they change jobs, do we have a parents program in place? So this is a very interesting trend. And thanks, Sunit, for bringing this out. I move to Malika. Malika, medical insurance has largely been about hospitalization. And in pandemics, people were falling sick at their homes. Yeah. Of course, there was hospitalization, extreme care, but a lot of people were getting treated at home. And many people were not able to go to hospital because of the risk. So how do you deal with those situations? And what have you seen, Malika, on this whole trend?
So thanks a lot, Sanjay. So like rightly mentioned, I think the difference is also between a wave 1 and wave 2. Wave 1 was still more of hospitalization, right? So we, even within our company in Unilever, we have a medical policy which was covering hospitalization. Last year itself, we did see some bits of home quarantine starting. So, but this year, I would say in April, May, the question really started coming because people were scared to go to the hospital, right? One is the scarcity, second was the fear. They were, if it was mild, they would rather be treated at home, and thus the request for home treatment really mushroomed. So we worked with our insurance provider, and we covered home isolation up to 15 days. So the home quarantine and treatment up to 15 days as part of our insurance itself. In addition, even hotel isolation where it was required was being covered through insurance. And then to support employees financially, as a company, we, while again some of the things we've been doing historically too, not linked to COVID, is if somebody, we would issue credit notes to hospitals so that immediately an employee is not in the need for cash, or give advances into the employee's account to pay off the cash, and later over a period of time, recover it in a mutually agreed time frame. So in addition to COVID financial assistance in terms of advances, we gave a one-time emergency fund up to 1 lakh rupees. You can just, no questions asked. It may not be for your immediate family, but for some other reason, you can go ahead, take it. We allowed partial PF withdrawal. So there was, I would say it's a mix from giving credit support to directly paying off hospitals first, increasing the coverage through insurance, and then through PF and other mediums. So we looked at all different mediums through which we could help an employee financially during this. We've had some things from before, but wave 2 definitely brought to the forefront some more requests from employees, which then we addressed this year.
That's interesting. And Sunit, let me ask you again something on the exposure side and the benefit side is, how are you seeing in the workforce the need for flexibility by the employees? Different generation, different needs. Is this becoming a serious issue, or this is a nice thing to just talk about? How do you see the needs on different groups within the employee group?
So Sanjay, so having been a rewards consultant myself in a previous life, I think used to always say of choice, flexibility, menu options. But I do feel that in many instances, we never really walked the talk on that. I mean, we said that we're giving choice, but was there really choice, especially from a benefits perspective? I think now things are changing. One, it's as I mentioned the other day, demographics of all shapes and sizes in terms of the workforce, they're asking for it. It's becoming a serious issue for them. I think organizations have also responded by truly walking the talk on the well-being. The thing is, in order to give that choice, and you mentioned about support to parent programs or in-law programs or elderly programs, if I would talk about it, the burden being shared by the organization really helps. So I think co-pay is a big one. However, I also think that there is, I think we as professionals working in the employee benefit space also need to be smart about it. So one of the things that I tell my CFO, and I would encourage everyone to talk, use that as a leverage to really look at how do we give more choice, because the choice does require some investment, right, Sanjay? If you're going to have multiple choices basis the demographic profile, it would mean some investment, some innovation. So what I've said is, look, we are going into this hybrid. We are working from anywhere right now. We will eventually go to a hybrid model. Many organizations I know, we have, a lot of our clients have restructured their entire real estate exposure. Now, if I'm saving those hundreds of crores across the country in 14 office locations, I'm going to reinvest that back in employee well-being, in being able to support co-pay, in being able to support home care, child care, as well as be able to give more flexibility. I'm very clear. I mean, that's the ROI on keeping our people safe and saying that we truly care for their well-being is far more than those additional 1 or 2% on my bottom line at this point of time. So I think that's the way I would. That's one of the things I've done, and that's one of the things I'll advocate as well on the forum today, Sanjay. So yeah, obviously choice is required, but choice comes sometimes as a cost. I would look at it as a longer term investment in employee well-being and eventually employee motivation and morale. Because today people want to feel safe. I mean, we can come back to it later in the Q&A, but even the experience in terms of return to work, very clearly people are not ready to come back to the way we used to be before February 2020.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you, Sunit. Malika, on the mental health, which is being so much spoken about, any learnings on the EAP, beyond EAP? Any thoughts on the whole issue of mental health, COVID and beyond COVID? Yeah.
Definitely. I think well-being, it's been 4-5 years since many companies started speaking of it, but employees, employers, and the common man, I think well-being and mental health has really come to the limelight since last year, and that's a good thing. It's the wrong context in which it's become a topping point, but I'm just happy to see that now more and more people are talking about it. From a mental well-being space, I think an interesting, why we've had an EAP provider for I think since 2016, but it was interesting for us to see that last year the number of calls we started receiving went up 2.5 times, right, over 2019 base, and most of the calls last year were related to stress and anxiety given the environment around us. But this year over last year itself, one, we've seen the uptake still going up, so on a higher base of 2.5, another 1.5 times, but also the conversation or the theme of the calls changing. If last year was about stress and anxiety, this year is about parenting and taking care of elder parents. So 20-25% of our calls are on these topics, so we're seeing the themes also changing. The other thing we saw is the platforms also changing. Last year we started getting feedback that most of us were were in lockdown, smaller flats in India, having joint families. So many people were not comfortable. So calling itself was a big step. But then they were uncomfortable having conversations with so many people around. And that came to us as feedback, and then we worked with a provider to introduce a web platform where you could chat with a counselor, and we could see that in the first 6 months of introducing chat we got some 900 unique hits.
Wow.
So clearly the platform also, this may be an India context, but the platform also we could see a shift from calls to leveraging the chat facility more. So I think from an EAP point of view, I can definitely say, I don't know what the global benchmark is, you may be better placed to tell us, but we could see around 1.5% of our population has started using our EAP helpline, which itself is a big number, given our context. The other thing that we've also seen is this is providing a platform for those who are feeling that they need to reach out to. But more than anything, today our context is people don't talk about it so much or don't know what, it takes a lot of effort to go and make that first call. So we've introduced a mental health champion program, which is basically creating mental health ambassadors. So we are running sessions where you come in, and once you get trained as a mental health champion, you just get some of the basics of watch outs on mental health, and you get trained to be an empathetic listener. And almost small things like publishing who are the mental health champions, or you can put it on your mail, so somebody who is interacting with you knows you're a mental health champion. So one, as a champion, you are you're taught how to identify some of the signs, and if somebody reaches out to you, just to be empathetic ear, and then direct them towards the resources or direct them towards the EAP helpline. So they're not counselors, but when you have so many ambassadors, then the conversation becomes more open. And for the person who is a bit hesitant about calling the EAP helpline and they reach out to you, maybe you are able to nudge them in that direction. So I think between these two things, that's how we are approaching how to provide support to our employees.
Thank you so much, Malika. I think there's so much of work to be done on this space. There's so much of need, and all these learnings are very useful for all our participants. And Rupa, would you like to share your share of the learnings on the mental health and the use of EAP or other platforms? Yeah.
Sure, Sanjay. So one of the things that at Goldman, it's a very intense, work culture, and we realized very early on that EAP by itself may not suffice, and so we actually have a resilience program on site with a number of trained psychologists who are working with us on site and available round the clock, plus an external psychiatrist if there is a need, from an additional support, for an individual. What we also have is, it's a very sophisticated, it's a very connected system. So because we have GPs on site, we have our occupational health physicians on site. If during any of those conversations, they do realize that the individual is going through some stress or they need additional support, or it could be just a conversation that an individual wants, they would reference that person to the resilience and the psychologists on site. What helps with having this on-site system, because these psychologists are based on-site, they are very well connected with the managers. They understand the environment. They understand specific functions, what they're going to, where is a surge, where is a challenge, all of that. And so the advisory also, when it is work-related, is very custom. And where we think that possibly one of the reasons of a challenge for the individual is stemming in from the manager, then we address the manager issue as well. So extrapolating that to specifically from a COVID perspective, there were a number of things that we did specifically during this period. One is, given just the time of that people would spend working crazy hours, because the same thing takes a lot longer and you would work much, much more. I think somewhere people lost track of, even though you're at home, where do you focus at home? You land up spending more time on a computer, it's more stress. And so we started doing like personalized sessions, group sessions for the teams based on the situation. We have virtual counseling sessions that we introduced because you couldn't come into the office. We looked at things like, mindfulness sessions, de-stressing sessions, guided meditation classes. More recently, especially after the COVID wave hit, we started doing support groups for grief counseling, survivor guilt. A lot of them started experiencing that, and we wanted to ensure that people had an opportunity to be able to talk, and of course various avenues for therapy. At some point we are also looking at introducing, and we do have these already when it was in office, but we're trying to see how we can do it virtually, is meditative art, music, painting. So those are avenues that we are trying to do virtually, which was very, very prominent when we were in office, but that's something that we're trying to move to virtual. Back to you.
Interesting. Thank you. Padmaja, there are a lot of questions pouring in also around this remote working. And I had a chat with some of the panel members prior to the start of the program. I understand everybody's wondering what is the model of the future. Everybody at the office, partially, fully, is it short term, is it long term? lots going on, and the issues and implication, and how do you engage employees? There's so much. Any thoughts around the whole issue of remote working, Padmaja?
No, it's a fantastic thing for all of us to crystal gaze, and the nice thing is we can co-create it, isn't it, Sanjay? But I just wanted to add one point to the the previous discussion we were having on mental wellness. That I think two things that are important over and above everything that was discussed. I think one is, Rupa spoke about it, that all said and done, a lot of organizations, there's a high pressure environment, there is burnout. How can we use technology to identify some of those pockets, right? Whether it's through, a UK firm actually used to have, wearables, right, as a pilot, which is given to a group of people, and you just check how they are doing on different parameters, or whether it's just checking utilization and seeing who is that pocket who's consistently burnt out and what can you do. I think that makes a big difference. It's important to do much more of that because it goes beyond, what we've historically done. The other is you need senior leaders and everybody to talk about mental wellness as important as physical well-being. Because that's when that message comes out. Mental wellness as important. You need to take time off, do it. It's as important as if you're unwell. And I guess that's a bit of a mind shift that we all have to make. On this whole coming back to office, it's really evolving. I think a couple of thoughts from our side. As Sunit said, we're also very clear we are not going to go back to a 5-day working. And to be honest, many professional services, for a long time, we did have flexible working, right? Because for us, it's much more about being at client site. So we have had flexible working, though it was 4,000 used to work remote to 14,000 over a weekend. That was a scale of a different order. Do we think everyone's going to be in office every day? Absolutely not, right? Absolutely not. We do find that in small teams, when teams engage, there are certain times, in a let's say from a client delivery perspective, where it's important to be together. But there are also times when, for bonding, for just being able to induct new joinees, it's nice if in small, safe ways you can, come together. So, for example, in small ways, people have started coming in, say, for partners coming into office, you just ping your team and say, hey, I'm in, anybody around, we can have coffee. And say if somebody's thinking, what should I do? They just come together in small groups, catch up, go back, right? So mandating is absolutely not something that works, but I think those small kind of connects help, right? And that's what I think more and more is happening. But I think we're all going to reimagine our office spaces. A lot of that work is already started. It's going to be much more office as collaboration. So rather than few large monolithic offices, maybe it will become much more of hub and spoke in terms of how it works. So I think that's how we'll have to be. And I think a lot of it is happening.
Thanks, Padmaja. I'm extremely conscious that each of these areas have so much to speak from each of our panelists and also from the participant. We have only barely touched the surface on each of these issues, and the level of discussion required on each of these subjects is so much more. I'm conscious of time, and there's been huge number of questions pouring in on the Q&A. But before I move to the Q&A, maybe I will ask a kind of a 30-second from each of the panel member on any big takeaway message which you think, and of course, I'll request you to stay back for the Q&A as well. So any learning you think which will be useful to the participants, whether it's 1, 2, 3, anything, and I'll move not in any particular order. Let me start with you, Sunit, but 30-second, big picture, any big areas which you think as a learning which could help everybody for the future. Yeah, Sunit.
It's a new reality. Don't make assumptions of the past. Be open to doing new things and co-create. That's one. Second is, remember to take care of your leaders also. They've taken the most stress. On my mental well-being, I've focused a lot on the leaders, because if they're feeling well, then it cascades to the team as well. So my 2 suggestions for the group.
Thank you. Malika?
So just building on what Sunit said on mental well-being, I'll just say that I think all of us have worked in the direction of providing support in a short-term basis. I think as an industry, as a community, we have to start also thinking on the terms of now mental well-being, as we're talking more and more in terms of a long-term sickness policy. Also, how do you help somebody return and get rehabilitated back to work, because this is something which is not like a physical injury where it's time bound that you'll recover in few months and you're back. Mental health cases take longer, and I don't know how equipped we are also to support them when they have to get back to work. It's a very new space. We historically may have had one or two, but now there are more numbers, and thus to also think through that how do we then support people who with mental health challenges on at a work front, and how to get back to work, because it's not a 1 month 2 month recovery path, it's longer. So I think equipping ourselves in that space is something we have to work towards.
Thank you. Rupa, your 30 seconds takeaways.
Lead by example, empathy. What worked until now may not work for the future. There is each one's situation is different, so you're going to have to customize what you try and do depending on the individual. So a blanket policy won't work anymore in the future. There has to be innovation. There has to be flexibility.
Padmaja.
I just stress the different strokes for different folks within the overall envelope of empathy. You look at productivity, some are so much more productive, some are so much less, right? The averages hide those differences. I think it's really important to figure out different approaches for each person within the overall umbrella of just much more empathy as organizations.
Great. I cannot thank you enough for all the panel members. Please stay with us. We have numerous questions, and some of them I would let the Marsh consulting team handle, because they're very pointed insurance market situations and dynamic. I've not. But if any of the panel members have any additional points to add, please do. I will let Prabal drive the Q&A part, but Prabal, I'll also assist you in. I saw numerous questions around group term life. Probably I saw more questions on this than any other area. I could share for the benefit of all the participants. Most of you are our clients whom we serve. I can share that it's a shame the way the group term life market is currently behaving, particularly with regard to existing policy on the claims. We have seen I've personally led discussions with a number of insurance company CEOs on the life side. They are hiding behind that they are not getting cooperation from their reinsurers on many of these claims and delays. We have taken up the matter with the insurance regulator to deal with the life insurance market at large, and we'll be pressing for a very most vigorous dialogue with the regulator to go hard on these insurance companies. So claims is something during COVID times from the life insurance is a sad situation, but not all claims are like this, but some of them. With regard to availability of the coverage, we foresee this challenge to continue in the near term. There's a global challenge with the life insurers, reinsurers. Just to share what is the problem of the global reinsurers, COVID is not confined to a geography. COVID is a global phenomenon. So reinsurers are also not able to manage their spread of risk. So there has to be a provision for innovative approach with the corporates with regard to some bit of a self-insurance if required, some bit of a looking at accident and other markets with regard to the non-life market is also coming out with close to near, term life cover. So there are a lot of interesting things to be explored, but yes, the challenge remains. And you also need to empower your colleagues to have a greater skin in the game by having their own protection program, by enabling them. So there's a lot of tools, but these are the challenges on the term life. With this, I hand over to Prabal to drive some of these question and answer, but a lot to be answered, and I'll leave it Prabal and the panel to handle that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sanjay. This was a very, very insightful discussion with all of you industry leaders chiming in there on so many impactful areas out there. And then thanks everyone for all these questions. I'm sure we'll have at least another 15-20 minutes of extended dialogue to cover some of these questions. Sanjay, you already addressed the questions around the life insurance side. Just to add in there, yes, we have always seen that the Indian life insurance companies have retained very low risk on their balance sheet, and they have been largely ceding the risk to the reinsurers. And when reinsurers are finding it tough to get them covered, so the Indian life insurance market is reeling through that pressure, and we are seeing therefore many of them not being able to extend their renewals or even take new policies. So yes, we are already with you on this, and right? Like Sanjay said, we are engaging the regulator, we are engaging all the life insurance company CEOs and their teams. We are also looking at how to structure alternate products, and Sanjay did touch upon that. So we have created certain alternate solutions. We'll be there to support you in as many possible areas to ensure that your employees remain covered and we are able to continue some of these unique benefits that we have introduced. If at all, maybe in the near term, once this situation would be over, let's say in a few months or a year, once things is down, we sincerely believe that group term life would be one segment of business which will see the highest demand in terms of prevalence. So yes, we are also conscious of the fact that in time to come, this will become an important area of work for all of us. So we'll see rapid transformation in this also as things is out. With vaccination happening more, things will ease out further. So with that, I'll end my discussion around the group term life subject. I'll now come to some of the panelists again, so that we can address some of the questions posed by the audience out there. One of the questions from Mr. Jumia Abbas is that COVID has transformed the way companies look at workforce and relative cost. Given feasibility of remote working with minimal productivity loss, exposure to pollution and other health hazards also being brought down significantly. Therefore, do we see that such initiatives will continue even post-COVID? So basically the question is about, will remote working continue in a long term also? And then what are the thoughts? We heard Padmaja speaking about it. I would like to just quickly go to Sunit to take a 2-minute bite on this. What's your view, Sunit, on this?
So, no, thanks for that, Prabal. It is a question on everyone's mind. Remote work in some form or manner will continue. There is no doubt about that. I mean, if I look at the geographies where, because of vaccination rates and they being more advanced in terms of their waves, people have gone back, are in the situation to go back. Many organizations, like some of our member firms in the UK and US, most notably, while offices are open, but people have much more flexibility, and we're allowing that going forward. There are organizations also, it's there in the public domain, who actually announced that you can work from anywhere forever. I think that was a famous quote. I think it was either Twitter or one of those companies. And we've had some of those in India as well. Now, it's giving us flexibility. It's giving us choices. While we as an organization will probably go into a hybrid model, most likely. But at the same time, we are giving choices like, suppose I live in my hometown is in the east of India. I've been working out of Gurgaon office. As my home base, do I come back to Bangalore or Gurgaon maybe? Or can I go to the Calcutta office because I'm closer to home that way? So we're giving those kind of choices to people, enabling that. And of course, there are some roles that we're identifying which could be more remote than others. Our client-facing teams always had that flexibility. But a lot of the teams which were coming into office and traditionally don't need to come into office, and we're allowing that remote working as well. So the hybrid model, again, is not that it'll be 100% people back in the office. So it'll be anything, but I've seen, and including at clients, anything from 50% to 70% back in the office. And that's where the real estate redesign has also happened. So more and more in my mind, in the future, the office is not somewhere where I go to work. The office is somewhere I go to collaborate, socially connect with my teams, do my team bonding, my coaching, my counseling sessions. Otherwise, I could work from anywhere. That's my personal view of where our work is going to be, say, 5 years from now. And technology is going to help us. I mean, if some of you follow Microsoft and their products, the Teams is going to become a virtual reality kind of a thing. They'll give you a small HoloLens where you will feel that, Sanjay and Praval are sitting in this room with me, and I'm looking at them through the HoloLens. So imagine that experience on Teams or Zoom or any such platform. Then why should I get on a flight, wake up at 4 in the morning if I can meet you virtually? Yeah, sometimes I'll meet you for a drink or coffee, but otherwise work gets done, right, Praval?
Very beautiful.
I know your global CEO and many other organizations have been impressed with a completely radically different view. You would like to comment very briefly? It's good to get all the perspectives on the table. And Malika, if you want to chime in, but brief, yeah.
So yes, I mean, in the financial services organization, they've very clearly, I think, announced that this is, as a culture, we are a culture which is collaborative, and there is a need to be in the office, to be able to, it's not just about work, but it's also about integration and connect and growth. And that will only happen at office. So we don't know where our future is going to be, but we have already directionally looking to get people back. May not be full time, but definitely starting with for a couple of days a week. What happens in the future is something that we will wait and watch, and we'll take
Malika, what you were saying?
I think similar to Rupa, I think some bit of it is we are borrowing from the past, right, in terms of culture. But if you think about all those people who've joined your organization over the last 1 year, it's been a year, but they've not been in office. So I think how Unilever globally sees, and so does the as Hindustan Unilever, is we're saying that we want our employees to be in office for at least 40% of the time. Rather, I would say minimum 40% of the time. So we do want 2 days a week, or I'm not saying 2 days a week, but it's a team sport. You work out the scheduling, but we do want our employees to start coming in to office, because office is for connect, collaboration, culture, and innovation. So we are not predominantly a remote working company. Yes, you'll have roles which are location agnostic, and the flexibility, we had flexible policies always, and those continue. But will we be 100% work from home company or 100% work from office company? No. Where we are saying is the sweet spot of at least 40% of your time you are spending. So in very crude terms, we're saying 2 days a week at least you should come to office to interact and meet people, because I think a big part of culture comes from connecting, collaborating.
Very interesting. We have one question from Vijaya Raghavan. This is about stakeholder engagement. Given that COVID has impacted every country and continent differently, so Padmaja, would you like to take a stab at this? In terms of managing stakeholders, and especially managing stakeholders globally, how have we managed our global stakeholders in terms of ensuring that yes, we give the right attention, and again there is a consistency across the globe?
I'm not sure I understood the question completely. Is this global stakeholders in terms of global customers, or
no, internal stakeholders? I think Vijaya would have meant
our internal stakeholders.
Given the impact of COVID has been different in every country, so
right.
How do we manage internal stakeholders in this discussion?
Right. So I understand. I think there were 2-3 perspectives which were there. One is maybe there could be concern from global stakeholders about business continuity, right? And particularly, I think during the second wave, there could have been some of those things. But I think what was really important for global stakeholders is to look at how our organizations dealing with this, right? I think what was very interesting in this time is that, we always talk about employee connect with companies, and I really believe it got strengthened so much simply because you start seeing that your organization is, your vaccination is given by your organization, your insurance, your hospitalization. I think all of us created these COVID support groups, isn't it?
Yes.
Where we were able to help get beds and ventilators and testing. So that connect really became very strong. I think there was a lot of support from a lot of global stakeholders because they all wanted to help. They wanted to send across. In fact, I think there were so many requests for funding to create small hospitals where, employees could get access to hospitalization where it was not possible. People wanted to send across ventilators. So I think there was largely a lot of support that came from global stakeholders in these times. And I think the predominant view was that how are we helping to take care of people so that, one is just from the employer responsibility and the second is from business continuity. So I think that's where a lot of the focus was. That's what I have seen. But I think it was a lot of global support towards the business community.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I will drop off because I have commitment. So thank you all very much. It was a very, very interesting discussion. Thank you very much. And I will be in touch later separately.
Thank you so much, Padmaja, for joining us. Thank you. Yes, we'll just continue for the next 10 minutes with some of you being able to stay back with us, and we still have a couple of more questions to address. One is about how do we prepare for third wave? I think this is from Mio Funyap. I believe she would like to know, we saw COVID wave 2, but if God forbid COVID wave 3 comes, how prepared are we and what are the actions do you think we should take? So Rupa, would you like to chime in there and share your views on how Goldman is preparing for COVID wave 3 potentially if that comes around our way?
Sure. So I think wave 2 taught us a very, very tough lesson, more in terms of, the helplessness where you wanted to help people, and as a firm you expect that you can do the world, and this is Goldman, you can do, and then you realize you're very humbled at the end of the day, saying, realizing that you can't, and you're one of many, and where you feel very, very ineffective. And through this period, there were things that we built, relationships that we built, which I know will continue to live. And if God forbid it comes in, and every possibility is that it will not hit with the same intensity. But what we are doing is, to what Padmaja alluded, the support groups are in place. Hospital, we actually real time even now updating hospital contact numbers. The helplines that were available, we are kind of updating that on a real time basis, ensuring the numbers are current. So there is a support group which is right now passive, but which can be activated overnight. There are relationships that we have built with various hospitals across India, various facilities across India in terms of ambulance, your medical systems, your pharmacies, all of that is already in play. And so that is something that we continue to build on. And also our own helplines from a medical perspective. We have we had surge resources coming in to help our employees clinically, and so that is something that we continue to keep active, with an opportunity to increase it at like a short notice, so that we are able to help. So three broad areas that I would say is, one is, what is your hospital network, what is the information flow, and what is a medical support system internally from a firm perspective to be able to get quick access to medicines and just quick teleconsulting, etc. So that's something that we've beefed up over a period of time.
Wonderful, Rupa. This is very insightful. Sunit, you'd like to give a 2-minute summary in terms of how is KPMG preparing for third wave?
I think Rupa covered a lot of things. I think we're also doing that. I mean, in our case, apart from the formal response, I think we also created a lot of volunteer groups, and those are still in place. A little dormant right now, but we'll activate them. And because locationally, for instance, we have an office in Kochi, so that group is still very active. The group in Chennai and Bangalore was active, and so it's at least now we've gone into that. But I think one more point I'll say, and I know a lot of Marsh clients are on the call. I must call out. I think asking for help from the right experts. I think the Marsh team, the way the entire Marsh leadership helped us, and brought in an ecosystem of expertise, both in terms of giving us advice on on the medical response that we could give, what are the access that we could give to people. I think that is also very important. I would say in asking for help is very important with the right experts. Second, I also saw a lot of collaboration, and that's something we're going to continue. For instance, for our vaccination, we actually collaborated with some of our clients and our ecosystem partners in terms of, for instance, I have an office in a location where my client doesn't have. We kind of decided to collaborate on the vaccination. We opened our office to them, and so I think that also is something which I would encourage corporate India, and we have a lot of our people on the call today to think about that, because the second wave taught us we learned on the fly. I think in the third wave we should do that with intention, and hopefully it'll be a mild one, and we'll all come out of it better. Raval.
So much, Sunit. I think this was very helpful, because this is one of the most important questions that many of our clients also ask. So I thought that I'll take that extra 2 minutes to hear from all of you on what each of our organization, what each organization is doing out there. So Malika, at the cost of repetition, what Sunit said, what Rupa said, anything else that's very innovative and unique that at Hindustan Unilever you are also doing, it will help a lot to hear this.
So I would say everything that they said even we're doing. So that's there. But I think, one of my senior leaders says this, that fix the roof when the sun is shining. I think when we were doing it earlier, we were doing it when it was pouring and we were trying to manage. I think what we're trying to look at is two things. One is medical resilience program, which is we have an internal occupational health team, but what is the right size of the team? Where should our resources be? Where should the concentrators be? Just that, getting that bit right of reviewing our models of thing. And the second thing is also how you're leveraging technology. Wave 1, we didn't need it. Wave 2, when there were so many cases, and also with vaccination with so many numbers, suddenly, Excel sheets would not help. And of course, some of the companies may be more digitally advanced, but then we brought in tools, even for all these calls, etc. We brought in tools and technology. But how are we now leveraging that technology to bring all the data into one place? Because now this is here to stay in some way or another. So how are you leveraging technology for insights and even for support, everything? So I think those are the two spaces, our medical resilience and the leveraging technology for support in wave 3 are the two elements that we are reviewing. While we hope it doesn't come, but we are reviewing if the need arises.
Thank you so much, Malika. We all hope and pray that it doesn't come, but yes, it's good to be prepared. And thank you so much for all those insightful ideas. I'll just take this one question and then I think we'll quickly check if there is any raised hands out there. Swarada Bhamre has put up this question to all the panelists. I understand that it might be too soon to answer this, considering the overall cost of extending the similar employee benefits is going to be much higher in next financial year. What are your thoughts on cost management for organization? Will you be looking at bearing the extra cost and expanding on the benefits, or move towards a larger employee contribution and diverting the funds to initiative with larger outreach? I'll take 2 minutes and maybe I'll also request anybody else in the panel to elaborate on this. But yes, Swarada, this is one very important question, that whatever we are doing right now in terms of all the additional spend on benefits, is this sustainable? What do we do to, in the long run, ensure that we are able to manage cost better? I have two bits as a benefit consultant role out there. Number one, we will see increasingly co-funding approaches. We have already talked about it, and organizations would co-fund cost in impactful programs. So programs which bring impact to the employees, I think organizations would slowly look at how to co-fund those programs. One of the very beautiful tools to actually co-fund cost is flex benefit. And it's a very unique model where we are able to move away from a defined benefit to defined cost. As and when the benefit landscape will become more complex and the range of benefits that we offer to our employees today will widen, and every company would then look at how do I manage my cost in the long run better, yet give employees the choice and the flexibility to do what is right for him. So I think that's where the era of flex benefit will emerge very strongly, and we are already seeing a lot of traction in the marketplace, where almost every month we are seeing more than 1 or 2 companies embracing flex as the future of their benefits. And of course, you need good technology. At Mercer Marsh Benefits, we do have technology platforms like Darwin to embrace flex. So that's just a 2-minute view from a benefit consultancy landscape. But Sunit, any more soundbite on this? Happy to hear from you.
So I had spoken about the fact that how one needs to redirect funds that could be released from other places, and really be mindful of the fact that this is the absolutely important agenda. In a client service organization like ours, I think the other element I have to say is that with so much new opportunity coming because of digital transformation and various other things, business touchwood has been good. So I'm proactively saying that if travel costs have gone down, all of those. So I am proactively discussing with our business leaders, saying that let's not look at this as a cost. This is an investment in essentially our productivity, morale of our people, because that, I think the one thing is that if they're not healthy and they're not feeling safe, then clearly those other parameters get impacted. So at least I can say that I'm happy to report those conversations have gone successfully. I know a lot of other organizations who at this point of time are not, I think, truly, and that's the mindset change, I think, that is happening not just amongst the HR and benefits community, but also amongst business leaders, that look, this is not something which is a nice to have, this is a must do. It's almost like having a business resiliency plan. So and again, it's for us to keep evangelizing this. I need to be smart about it, right? You don't need to go overboard. I think the points that I think all of my fellow panelists also, you said, right? You need to look at where do you really invest so that you get the best ROI. So I don't see this as and you need to also have a longer term perspective. It's not just about this year's budget or this. You need to have a 3 to 5 year view on this, is my view.
Very true. Very true. Thank you so much, Sunit. This was very useful. I think we are mostly done on the Q&A on the tab, but I'll request my colleague Niladri, in case we have any raised hands, if any of our participants out there would like to ask any questions live, we have 3-4 minutes still
There's
left.
a Dinesh Dash raising hand.
Niladri, would you kindly unmute Mr. Dinesh Dash?
There's also Swati Arora who has raised hand. We can have quick question and probably a
sorry, actually by mistake it raised.
Okay.
No problem. Swati, can we unmute her line?
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, Swati, go ahead.
Okay, so I want to understand, is there is there any suggestions that organizations are doing in terms of creating a benevolent fund? Like when we are talking about childcare education, so is there a separate budget that suddenly organizations have set aside for the COVID cases, or is there a preparation that has been done for years? How is that being managed?
Swati, I'd like to only give a couple of minutes view and then welcome anybody else out there. So Swati, what has happened in the area of benevolent fund is mostly the benevolent fund is able to cater to anything that is not able, we are not able to place in the insurance market. So yes, many companies adopted and embraced benevolent fund only for benefits which we are not able to go back to the insurance market for a response. So for example, childcare for a 18-year horizon, you don't find an insurance plan typically which will be able to support a corporate for a childcare plan of 18 years. And we did therefore see that some companies have gone into benevolent fund as one of the model out there. Similarly, any benefit which is typically not in the insurance domain, yes, there are clients who have looked at benevolent fund. So that's one of the approach to look at. And life insurance companies do have benevolent fund, and we at Mercer Marsh Benefits also are able to advise corporates on how to structure these benevolent funds and how to use them for the right kind of products. There are many elements of taxation. There are many elements of creating the trust. There are many elements of understanding the actual liability out there for any benefits that we move into benevolent fund. So yes, we do have the expertise in-house to support clients on some of those aspects, and we do consult clients on that. Swati. Thank you. Niladri, if you have any other raised hands out there.
No, we don't have anybody else right now.
I don't think. No.
Well, I'll take a quick 30 seconds to make a summary of some of the question and answers which we observed, and it's been awarded in the Marsh view on this is, and what we are seeing for the future for the benefit of all. The overall trend globally, and certainly in a market like India, we see employees with demand, and the market would offer more benefits. That's a certain. The whole market will be demanding more, and they will be getting more benefits. How the funding of the benefits will emerge, it will emerge differently in different industries, depending on their profitability, viability, and the market response. We will see an emergence of greater top-up and voluntary plans to support some of these benefit needs, because some of the organizations like to limit the control on the funding through huge encouragement on benefits, voluntary program. Within Marsh, we have seen in the last 3 years, a massive mushrooming of voluntary benefits demanded because employees needs to be protected more. So voluntary is one part. 2, co-funding. As Prabal said, organizations can choose to co-fund to create a bigger impact. One of the biggest co-funding impact is on the elderly parents program to increase participation. This is a high impact co-funding strategy. Flexible benefits is a high impact co-funding strategy, creating choice to the employer. So these kinds of co-funding strategies will emerge. With regard to the areas where the biggest benefit demands will emerge, whether it's elderly care, whether it's non-hospitalization area, because India has largely been hospitalization-driven market. And the third is mental health. Though the insurance market has been made compulsory to cover mental health, still it covers on the hospitalization. A lot of mental health is actually outside all insurance. So we'll see a lot of demand there. Digital healthcare has galloped 5 times in last, say, 6 months, I would say, something like that. So the digital healthcare has just suddenly come in a big way. It's a low cost, high impact, but it's arrived and easy to implement. Death at risk is a puzzle to be solved. Highest demand ever in terms of employer and employee, and the lowest supply from the insurance and reinsurance market. We believe the supply will ease once the COVID risk is taken out for the insurance market. Insurance market is scared of the COVID risk, but they're happy to take the death risk minus the COVID. So these are some of the big emerging trends. I know we have not covered all the things, but just wanted to summarize. More benefits to stay, funding strategies will be spread out and will be different for different industries and different companies. So with this, once again, we thank all the panelists and thank all the colleagues, and more importantly, thank all the participants. I know we have a lot of questions unanswered. We will reach out to you and we'll continue the conversations. Thank you, everyone, once again.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the panelists.
Thank you, everybody.
So much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.